Hey kids, it's me, Teacher A. Let me help you on complex numbers. Alright, let's start. So what are complex numbers? Okay, let me give you a definition. So a complex number is any number that can be written in this form. A plus BI. Okay, where A and B are both real numbers. And don't forget, I squared is equal to -1. So definition ito. So don't forget that I squared is equal to -1. Okay, so we denote the set of complex numbers as a capital letter C. Okay, so parang ganito. Ganyan, so parang C is the set containing all the expressions in this form, A plus BI, where A and B are real numbers and I squared is equal to -1. Now I have a question. How do you read this? Is 2 an element of the set C? What do you mean by that? Ang ibig sabihin lang niyan is ito. Is 2 a complex number? What's your answer? Is it a yes or a no? Well, the answer is yes. Because you can write 2 in this form, in A plus BI form. How? Ganito lang. 2 is equal to 2 plus 0i. You see? So you were able to write the number 2 in A plus BI form. Your A is 2 and your B is 0. So that's why 2 is a complex number. Okay? Some basic notes on complex numbers. So for example, you have a complex number 2 minus 3i. Okay? Your 2 here, this one is called the real part of the complex number. Okay? While the coefficient of I, what is the coefficient of I? -3. Okay? You call this number as the imaginary part of the given complex number. Okay? So, please take note, yung coefficient lamang ang imaginary part, which is the -3. Hindi kasama yung I. Alright? Okay. Another note on complex number. So, may iba't ibang itsura ang complex numbers. Okay? Tapos kanina nakita natin ang form na ito. Like that. So, here are some examples. -5, 0, 2. We all know that they are complex numbers. Bakit? Because we can write them in A plus BI forms, right? Even 0. We can write this in A plus BI form. How? 0 is equal to 0 plus 0i. Okay? So, 0 is a complex number also. So, anong tawag kapag ganito yung form ng complex numbers? They are called real numbers. Okay? May iba pang itsura ang complex number. Ganito. Parang ganito yung normal na itsura ng complex number. Okay? You have the real part and you have the imaginary part. Okay? Itong pangalawang example, 2i minus 3, walang typo error dito. Okay? Binigay ko itong example na ito to show you that pwedeng mauna ang merong I. You see? 2i minus 3. Okay? So, pwedeng mauna to. Kapag ganyan ang itsura ng complex number, you call them as imaginary numbers. Okay? The third form of a complex number ay ganito. Anong napansin naman ninyo? Walang real parts, right? Wala yung real parts. Kapag ganito naman, walang real parts, ang tawag dito ay pure imaginary numbers. Alright? Okay, last basic note. I think importante itong last note. Don't forget that the square root of -1 is equal to I. Okay? This is what you call the principal square root of -1. Okay? So the square root of -1 is equal to I. Don't forget that. So what? So what kung alam natin na may complex numbers? Diba? Okay, well, since alam na natin na may complex numbers, we do have solutions to these equations. Kasi kung nung real numbers pa lang ang alam natin, hindi pa natin kayang isolve ang mga equations na ito. But now, since we have complex numbers, we do have solutions to these equations. Okay? Let's try to solve this quickly. Kasi hindi naman ito ang main topic natin. Okay? So, gawin lang natin ito ng mabilis. Okay, so how do we solve number 1? It's x squared equals -4. How do you solve for x? So it becomes x is equal to positive negative square root of -4, right? And we know that -4 is equal to 4 times -1, right? It's 4 times -1. So that's why we have like that. It can be written as square root of 4 times the square root of -1. But what is square root of 4? It's 2. What is square root of -1? It's I. So the answer or the values of x are positive, negative, 2i. Alright? Let's move on to number 2. We have x cubed minus 8 equals 0. So to solve for x here, you recall your vast knowledge in factoring. How do you factor a difference of 2 cubes? So you recall that. And here are the factors. You have x minus 2 times x squared plus 2x plus 4. And that is equal to 0. And then what's next? If you have two factors and their product is equal to 0, it means that yung isang factor ay equal to 0 or the other factor is equal to 0 or they are both equal to 0. Okay? Yun na yung ibig sabihin nun. Okay? So we solve for x. So for the first equation, x minus 2 is equal to 0, you will get x equals 2. What about for the second equation? X squared plus 2x plus 4 equal to 0. You cannot factor this. This one is not factorable. So what do? You make use of the quadratic formula. Do you still recall that? It is x is equal to negative of b. Where is b? Ito yon. Okay, because it is ax squared plus bx plus c equal to 0. So negative of b plus minus the square root of this one here is the answer in b squared minus 4ac. You will get negative 12. Please do that. Okay, all over 2a. 2 times a. All right? Okay, so simplifying further, please take note that negative 12 is equal to negative 4 times 3, right? But what is the square root of negative 4? From number 1, square root of negative 4 is 2i. Okay? So please simplify this and make sure you will get this final answer. Okay? I will not go into detail of this solution because this is not the focus of our discussion. Siningit ko lang ito just to show you na ito yung isang gamit ng complex numbers. Alright? Okay, let's continue on complex numbers. In the discussion of complex numbers, dun talaga lumabas yung I. Okay? So it's really nice to discuss powers of I. What do I mean by that? Exponents of I. Okay? So, kung yun lang naman ang pag-uusapan, ito lang ang kailangan nyong malaman. I to the 0 is equal to 1. It's very easy to recall, right? I raised to 1 is equal to I. And then from the definition of complex numbers, I squared is equal to negative 1. And finally, I cubed is equal to negative I. Okay? It's very easy to show that I cubed is equal to negative I. You just write I cubed as I squared times I. And then you will get negative I. Yan lang. Yan lang, apat na yan ang kailangan yung i-memorize. Okay? But what if we have I raised to 219? How do we get the value of I raised to 219? Well, it's easy. All you have to do is to recall or to remember this note that I raised to n, where n is any non-negative integer, is equal to I raised to r. What is this r? Capital R. This capital R is the remainder when your n is divided by 4. Do you still recall what are the possible remainders when you divide a number by 4? So, mga possible remainders lang when a number is divided by 4 are 0, 1, 2, and 3. At ito lang sakto yun, no? Dun sa note natin, exponent 0, exponent 1, exponent 2, exponent 3. Okay? So, therefore, yung ating I raised to 219 is equal to, what is the remainder when 219 is divided by 4? Diba? 3. So, that's why I raised to 219 here is equal to I cubed. And what is I cubed? Negative I. Okay? So, your I raised to 219 is equal to negative I. Okay? Let's do more. So, let's answer this example. Let's perform the indicated operations and let's simplify. Okay, let me copy again the given. Okay, so ang gagawin lang natin dito is to divide the exponent by 4 and then we get the remainder. Okay, so gawin natin siya isa-isa. Okay, let's start with I raised to 13. Diba? You have I raised to 13. So simple, you just divide 13 by 4. So 13 divided by 4, what is the remainder? Diba? It's 1. So we have 3I raised to 1. Right? Okay, next. What about I raised to 2020? What is the remainder when you divide 2020 by 4? It's 0. So that's why you have 5I raised to 0. Okay? And then for this one, 2 times I raised to negative 6, I simply write it without a negative exponent. How do I do that? Ilalagay ko sa ilalim. Ganyan. Okay? And then finally, what is I raised to 7? This one is equal to, what is 7 divided by 4? What is the remainder? It's 3. So that's why we have that one. Okay? So we simplify further. What is I raised to 1? It's I. Okay? What is I raised to 0? It's 1. Okay? What about I raised to 6? This one is equal to I squared. because the remainder when 6 is divided by 4 is 2. So that's why it becomes I squared. Saan equal ang I squared? Negative 1. Okay? And then here, I cube is equal to negative I. Okay? So that's why we have this. Let us double check. I raised to 1, it's I. I raised to 0, it's 1. So 1 times 5, you'll get 5. Okay? Here, I raised to 6 is equal to I squared. And what is I squared? Negative 1. So 2 divided by negative 1, it's negative 2. So that's why I have negative 2 here. Okay? And then finally, what is I cubed? It is negative I. Negative I times 7, you'll get negative 7I. Alright? Okay. So let's combine like terms. You'll have that. What is 5 minus 2? You will get 3. And then I just copied negative 7I. And then we distribute. We distribute 3I inside. What do we get? We'll get 9I minus 21I squared. This one. Okay? Kaya pa natin yung i-simplify. How? We know that I squared is equal to negative 1. What is negative 1 times negative 21? It becomes positive 21. So, writing in A plus BI form, we have this as the final answer. Okay? All right. So, that's how we deal with powers of I. Okay? So, after powers of I, we have the conjugate of a complex number. And this is the definition. Kapag nakakita kayo ng bar sa taas, ito, ibig sabihin yan, the conjugate of A plus BI. And how do you get the conjugate? Ito daw yon. It is A minus BI. So, madali lang. Ang gagawin nyo lang talaga, kung ano man yung sign ng imaginary part, papalitan ninyo. If it's plus, gagawin nyong negative. Kung negative naman, gagawin nyong positive. Okay? Yung imaginary part lang ang papalitan ninyo ng sign. Okay? Let's consider these examples. What do you mean by that? What is the conjugate of negative 5? Recall, negative 5 is a real number. Okay? Actually, you may want to write it in A plus BI form in this way. Like that, di ba? Or how do you get the conjugate? Papalitan nyo ang sign ng imaginary part. So if it's plus, gagawin yung minus. But what is minus 0? Ay, wala lang naman yun, di ba? So the conjugate of negative 5 is simply negative 5 pa din. Okay? Kasi kahit naman gawin kong minus 0 ay ito, it's still 0. So it's like negative 5 minus 0. So you have negative 5. Okay? What about this one? What is the conjugate of 3i? Okay, you may want to write it again in A plus BI form. Like that. Okay, so what is the conjugate? Anong rule? You just change the sign of its imaginary part. So if it's plus 3i, you'll get, what is its conjugate? It becomes negative 3i. Okay? Another example. No. What is the conjugate of 1 minus 5i? Okay, you simply change the sign of the imaginary part. So it becomes 1 plus 5i. Let's have this last example. Dito madaming batang nagkakamali. Okay, akala nila ang conjugate nito is 2i plus 7. But it's not like that. Anong rule natin sa conjugate? You change the sign of the imaginary part. Where is the imaginary part here? It's 2. So it's positive 2. So, ito ang papalitan ninyo ng sign. Alright? Or, you may want to write it in A plus BI form. A muna, the real part muna, and then the imaginary part. What do I mean by that? Ganito. So, 2i minus 7 can be written as negative 7 plus 2i. Okay? Tapos saka kayo kumuha ng conjugate. At ano ang conjugate niyan? It is simply negative 7 minus 2i. Okay? So I hope this is clear. Let's now discuss basic operations involving complex numbers. Okay? So, i-discuss ko ito by examples na. Okay? So, let's consider two complex numbers. By the way, complex numbers are usually denoted by letter Z, lowercase letter Z. Okay, so since I have two complex numbers here, I use Z1 and Z2. Okay, so let's consider these two complex numbers. So ang gagawin lang natin, we're going to add them, subtract them, multiply them, divide them. All right? Okay, let's do it. What is the sum of these two complex numbers? So, ikakopy lang ni teacher. So, this is Z1 and this is Z2. So, madali lang ito. Okay? To add complex numbers, all you have to do is to add the real parts. Ito yun. So, you have 2 plus 3. And you also add the imaginary parts. Pero ang ginawa ko, pinag-add ko yung itong buong to kasama yung I. Okay? Para siyang combining like terms or combining similar terms in your algebra. Okay? So you combine terms with I and you combine terms without I. Parang ganun lang yun. Okay? You'll have that. So 2 plus 3, itong dalawang to, and then 5i plus a negative I. So we have 5 plus 4i. Okay? In performing operations on complex numbers, you always make sure that the final answer is always in A plus BI form. Alright? Okay, let's now get the difference. Okay? So, kinopya ko lang ulit ito. So, I have 2 plus 5i minus 3 minus I. So, you may want to distribute this negative sign here. So, it becomes negative 3 plus I. Okay? Or you may want to, combine the real parts and the imaginary parts, including I. You'll have this one. Okay? So, I have 2 minus 3i for the real parts. And then for the imaginary parts with I, I'll have 5i minus a negative I. Okay, so simplifying, you will get negative 1 plus 6i. Okay? Now we get the product of these two complex numbers. Let's find Z1 times Z2. So we have like that. So it's time to recall your FOIL method or any method that you know on how to multiply these two binomials. Okay? Yung FOIL method that is most commonly used. You multiply the first terms, the outer terms, the inner terms, and then finally the last terms. Doing that, you're going to have this one. Okay? You may want to double check. First term, yeah, outer, inner, and then this is the last term. Okay? Okay, let's simplify further. We combine like terms. So, ito lang naman yun. Negative 2i plus 15i, you will get 13i. And then, what else? I squared. What is I squared? I squared is equal to negative 1. That's why we have this. Okay? And then finally, negative 5 times negative 1, you get positive 5. Positive 5 plus 6, you'll get 11. So you'll have 11 plus 13i. You see, yung final answer is always written in a plus bi form. Okay, let's now have division. Let's find the quotient of these two complex numbers. Let's find z1 divided by z2. So, let's have a 2 plus 5i divided by 3 minus I. So our goal here is to be able to write our final answer in a plus bi form. Okay? So, yung a plus bi form, ang tawag doon, standard form of a complex number or the rectangular form of a complex number. Okay? So, to be able to do that, we multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the conjugate of the denominator. What is the conjugate of our denominator? What is the conjugate of 3 minus I? It is 3 plus I. So, ganito lang yon, like that. And then, you simply multiply the binomials here, same as in the denominator. Dito sa taas, you may want to use the FOIL method. Pero sa denominator, notice that ito ay isang special product. You recall difference of two squares. Okay? Pero kung hindi nyo yun ma-recall, okay lang din na FOIL method ang gawin nyo sa denominator. But here, I'm going to use the difference of two squares. Okay? Okay, so doing the FOIL in the numerator and applying the special product, okay, making it a difference of two squares, we are going to have this one. Okay? Ito yung sinasabi kong difference of two squares. 3 squared minus I squared. Okay? And then you may want to double check the FOIL method in the numerator. Okay? Okay. So we simplify further. What is I squared? It's negative 1. Okay? Same here. I squared is negative 1. So in the denominator, you have 9 minus a negative 1. So you have 10 in the denominator. What about in the numerator? You have, this is 6, and this one is negative 5. So what is 6 minus 5? You have 1. Okay? Plus, this one is 17i. You have like that. Okay? Ang mas accurate na pagsusulat ng tamang sagot nito ay ganito. It's 1 over 10 plus 17 over 10i. Okay? The real part is 1 over 10 and the imaginary part is 17 over 10. Okay? So, I hope you learned all the 4 basic operations involving complex numbers. Okay. So, let's have more on complex numbers. Note number 1. If you have two complex numbers and they are equal, therefore, their real parts are equal and their imaginary parts are also equal. Alright? Okay. Next. We have this identity element of addition in the set of complex numbers. So, what is this identity element of addition? Okay? Ito yung number na i-add mo to any given complex number, tapos ang magiging sagot is the complex number itself. Okay? So, you're given a number, a complex number, ano yung i-add mo dun sa given complex number, tapos ang sagot, the complex number itself. It is 0, right? So, in complex number notation, we have 0 equals 0 plus 0i. Yan yung identity element of addition. Kasi any complex number added to 0 or added to 0 plus 0i, you will get the complex number itself. Okay? What about the identity element of multiplication? Okay? Ito naman yung number na i-multiply mo sa isang given complex number And then the answer will be the complex number itself. It is, what is the identity element of multiplication? It is 1. And how do you write it in A plus BI form? 1 is equal to 1 plus 0i. That is the identity element of multiplication in C. All right? And then we have every complex number has an additive inverse. What do you mean by additive inverse? Ito naman yung i-add mo sa isang given complex number. And then if you do that, if you add them, the answer is 0. Okay? For example, 2. Anong i-add mo sa 2 to get a 0? It is negative 2. So negative 2 is the additive inverse of positive 2. Okay? It's a basic example. Later, we're going to have another example. Okay? And then lastly, we have this note. Every non-zero complex number has a multiplicative inverse. Ano naman tong multiplicative inverse na ito? This is the complex number that you multiply to a given complex number, tapos ang sagot, 1. Okay? Let me give you an example. Let's take 2 again. Okay? Anong i-multiply mo sa 2 so that the answer is 1? Diba? It's 1/2. Okay? So, yun lang yung ibig sabihin ng multiplicative inverse. In our example, 1/2 is the multiplicative inverse of 2. Alright? Okay. Let's have this basic example. Okay. Let's find the additive inverse of negative 9 plus 2i. So, what do we mean again by an additive inverse? Ganito lang yon. We're looking for a number here on the blank. We're looking for a number so that when I add this to the given negative 2 plus 2i, the answer is 0 plus 0i. Okay? So, ang dali lang niyang isipin, dapat mag-0 lang yung real part at dapat mag-0 lang yung imaginary part. Parang ito, how do you make negative 9 0? What are you going to add? You add positive 9. Okay? How are you going to make positive 2 here? The imaginary part, 0. You add a negative 2. Okay? So that's why we have this. So we say 9 minus 2i is the additive inverse of negative 9 plus 2i. Okay? All right. Let's take this another example. Find the multiplicative inverse of 9 plus 2i. So it's like, what are we going to multiply to 9 plus 2i? Eto. Ano kaya ang i-multiply natin kay 9 plus 2i to get 1? Is simply the reciprocal of 9 plus 2i. Ito. Diba? But, hindi accepted na final answer ang 1 over 9 plus 2i. Hindi accepted na 1 over 9 plus 2i ang multiplicative inverse ng 9 plus 2i. You still need to simplify this. You have to write this in A plus BI form. And how are we going to do that? We simply multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the conjugate of the denominator. And again, what is the conjugate of 9 plus 2i? It is 9 minus 2i. Okay? You perform again multiplication of binomials or difference of two squares. You should get this one. Okay? You say that 9 over 85 minus 2 over 85i is the multiplicative inverse of 9 plus 2i. Alright? Okay. Okay, kids, I have something for you. If you want to practice more, you may want to answer these problems on your own. Okay? You may want to key in your answers, your final answers in the comment section below. Okay? And let me check that for you. All right? Thank you for watching. See you in my next video.